Hey everyone, David Chen here. I think Top Gun Maverick might be the perfect Legacyquel. Let's talk about it. If you're just joining for the first time, welcome. I generally talk about TV, film, media, and technology, so if you like that kind of stuff, be sure to hit like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to get new videos whenever I post them. I also want to mention that I'm going to be giving mild spoilers for Top Gun Maverick. Nothing major, but if you want to go in completely fresh, best to just skip this video, come back after you've seen the film. In 2015, Matt Singer wrote an article over at ScreenCrush.com called Welcome to the Age of the Legacyquel. The thing that prompted that piece was the arrival of the trailer for Star Wars The Force Awakens. And Matt Singer describes a kind of film that was becoming very, very popular at the time and still is today. Films in which the purpose of the new movie is to hand the series down from the first generation of folks to the next generation of folks. And in that regard, I think Top Gun Maverick really succeeds. I'm going to identify a few things that Top Gun Maverick does really well when it comes to being a good Legacyquel. Number one, the cast. Legacyquels always have a bunch of new cast members. They're young, they have cool names. They're basically aching for a spin-off based off of this franchise. But most importantly, some of the members of the old cast show up. In Top Gun Maverick, of course, you have Pete Mitchell, who's played by Tom Cruise. This time, he's the flight instructor, and he's the one who needs to train up the next generation of recruits to be the best that they can be. And usually that best is derived from some reverence of the old ways or some combination of the old ways and the new ways. In addition to Tom Cruise, you also have Val Kilmer in this movie. He plays Tom Iceman Kazansky. And I just got to say, the way that Top Gun Maverick handles the Iceman stuff is extremely powerful. I have been following Val Kilmer's story. I watched the documentary Val on Prime Video, which I'd strongly recommend. And I understand that there have been parts of his life recently that are quite challenging. He can't talk in the same way that he used to. And I'll just say that the way the movie handles that is beautiful and sensitive and really powerful. The two characters do share a scene in this movie, and you get a sense of the weight of history in this scene. When Top Gun, the original with Tony Scott, was released in 1986, it kicked off both Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer's career. It helped to make them international stars. Of course, they've both traveled very, very different paths since then. And seeing them reunite as these characters and what this movie did with the characters they play was deeply moving, and I really appreciated it. But beyond that, primarily, it's about Tom Cruise, aka Pete Mitchell, passing on the knowledge that he's gained over the last few decades as one of the most talented dogfighters in the Navy onto the next generation of recruits. And it's true of not only Tom Cruise's character, but you also feel like Tom Cruise as a movie star is passing along the mantle to the next generation of young actors, helping them up, giving them a starring role in a major release from a major studio. And I think that dynamic really works in the film. They have great chemistry, and it's a joy to see them all on screen. Second thing this movie does right in terms of Legacyquels is the plot. Now, in the case of a movie like Star Wars The Force Awakens, the plot is extremely similar to the original Star Wars A New Hope. And that's also true of Top Gun Maverick versus Top Gun. Both movies essentially consist of many, many scenes of flight training, but where Top Gun Maverick improves on the formula is it makes the stakes of this extremely clear. Top Gun, the original 1986 film, was very much a vibe movie. I rewatched it recently, and obviously it was a huge cultural phenomenon, but it's not a movie I go back to very often. It's not a movie I like very much, because I kind of get the sense that we're just hanging out with these characters most of the time. And if you enjoy that, great, all the power to you. But I like my movies to have a little bit more in terms of stakes, and this movie definitely sets that up. Now, there are very simple stakes, and they're very vague stakes, but they are stakes. There's a mission that is being described. It's like you got to train for this mission. You watch them train for the mission, and then at the end of the movie, they go do the mission. And whether all of them survive, open question that you'll have to learn for yourself when you see the movie. But what this does is it makes every single scene in the movie purposeful, and it creates all this tension of like, are they going to train for the mission in time? When they go on the mission, are they going to accomplish it in time? Very, very basic stuff in terms of movie making, but I really think it does work. Structurally, though, the movie borrows a lot from the first film, and it even borrows some shots and plot points from the first film, like never going below the hard deck, for instance. It even borrows from the silly politics of the first film. You know, in the first Top Gun movie, there were MiGs, and you could deduce that the MiGs were Soviet MiGs, but they never identified who the enemy was. In this movie, it's even more extreme. They're just the enemy. They have fifth-generation fighters, and you know that they're not in NATO. They're against NATO. But beyond that, The enemy could be anyone. And I think that's really important because it makes the movie as broadly appealing as possible, and it makes it so you can unabashedly root for the good guys because we don't know who the bad guys are. They're just the enemy. So anyway, Top Gun Maverick imitates and improves upon the plot of the original Top Gun. But what is the third element that's important for any Legacyquel? I would say some kind of reinvention. That reinvention can come in many forms. It can be the enemy is different, the plot mechanics are different. But in the case of Top Gun Maverick, what is different is the technology.
You just can't create this kind of experience unless you shoot it live.
The original Tony Scott Top Gun is really impressive given its relatively low budget and the technology they had at the time. But rewatching the original Top Gun today, it's very difficult to believe that those guys actually went up in those jets because every time it cuts to their face, it's like a close-up shot and it looks like, blue screen or green screen behind them. With all the marketing for Top Gun Maverick, what they're saying is all these actors actually went up in jets and you can feel the G-forces on their faces and you can see the light streaming through the cockpit window and all these things that make it feel like these actors actually went up and did the things that they did in the film. And I have to say, it looks incredible. The action sequences feel much more geographically coherent than they did in the original Top Gun, but you just kind of believe that these actors are in some way in peril, and that is compelling to watch in a movie. So between the cast, the plot, and how this movie reinvents the look and the feel of the original, I feel like Top Gun Maverick is a great Legacyquel. It is hugely entertaining, and it is a great time at the movie theater. But beyond all those things, I just want to talk a little bit about Tom Cruise himself. Really, what Tom Cruise is trying to demonstrate with Top Gun Maverick is that movies like Top Gun Maverick should still exist. And what are movies like Top Gun Maverick other than Legacyquels? Well, first of all, they're movies that don't have superheroes or comic book characters. They're movies where you don't need a ton of CG. Obviously, there's a little bit in here. And you barely even need IP. I mean, Top Gun was a classic movie, but it's been decades since that movie came out. What you need is an actor who's willing to bleed for our entertainment. What you need is somebody who's willing to do something real, because the audience can tell when somebody is doing something real on screen. Like, you can kind of just feel when there's a difference between something that's CG and something that's real. And Top Gun Maverick, it feels like it gives us something real. Top Gun Maverick is also a movie that benefits greatly from being seen in IMAX, from being seen in large format theaters. I saw Top Gun Maverick in IMAX and the sound mix was incredible. I could feel it on my clothes when these planes took off. Like, my shirt was shaking. And it's just this affirmation that you can get something in a theater watching with a bunch of strangers with amazing audio and amazing visuals that you just can't get at home. You could stream something like Top Gun Maverick, and you will be able to stream it on Paramount Plus probably one day, but it really doesn't measure up to the theatrical experience, and I think Tom Cruise is trying to say that by making this film. Finally, Top Gun Maverick is a throwback to 80s and 90s films where you could unabashedly root for the military and the United States. This is before the end of the Cold War, before 9/11, before the protracted conflicts that we had in Afghanistan and Iraq. And what Top Gun Maverick invites us to do is think back to a time when, hey, the United States is the good guys, and we have extremely competent people in the military, and they can still do great things. And even though I think the reality of the situation is much more complicated than that, it's very clear that Top Gun Maverick is a nod to those kinds of movies. It has that kind of sensibility. In many ways, Top Gun Maverick is just a nod to simpler times. When movies were simpler, our politics were theoretically simpler, and it was much more easy to tell who are the good guys and the bad guys. And Tom Cruise is again saying that there's still people who are interested in this type of film. There's a moment in this movie when Ed Harris's character is confronting Maverick, and he says that a character like Maverick is headed for extinction. That in a world of drone warfare and automation, there's really no need for a person like Maverick anymore and his particular set of skills. He's talking about Pete Mitchell, but who he's really talking about is Tom Cruise himself and the idea of the movie star. And he's talking about this age when a single person who does death-defying feats on film for real is enough to get you to pay for a babysitter, drive out to the theater, spend $100 on snacks and parking and tickets and so on, and watch a movie like this with a bunch of strangers in a dark room with amazing sight and sound. He's basically saying like that way is going away because we're now in the era of streaming and we're now in the era of IP and superheroes and things of that nature. That's what Ed Harris's character is really saying in that scene. And Tom Cruise's character responds,
"Maybe so, sir. But not today."
Maybe so, sir, but not today. And that's what this movie's all about. Tom Cruise is on the way out. Tom Cruise's ilk are on the way out, but not today. Not yet. And a movie like Top Gun Maverick, which is really one of the best times I've had in the theater in the last year, is evidence of that. It's Tom Cruise saying, hey, movies can still be magic. They can still be fun. They can still be entertaining. They can still be extremely simple in their politics. And they can still be a great time. So I had a good time with it, even though I recognize it for its flaws and its simplicity. But overall, I think Top Gun Maverick is not only a great film, it's the perfect Legacyquel. But let me know what you thought. Did you like the fact that it was a Legacyquel? Did you like the movie at all? What did you think? Hit me up in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I want to give a big shout out to all of my patrons at patreon.com/Dave Chen. Thank you so much for your support. Be sure to sign up there for bonus audio, bonus podcasts, and access to my office hours. And we'll see you in the next one.